Do I just hold that for no reason?
Yeah, you can hold it.
It's you keep your Instagram. Right. I think I met most of you. My name is Khalid Keshta. I have type 1 diabetes for 11 years now. Got diagnosed on my 18th birthday, and I'm a diabetic bodybuilder. So, and don't look at me now, okay? I'm way bigger than this. I've been injured for a year, just before anyone comments. Just getting it out here before anyone like, how on earth they have this medication? So I got diagnosed on my 18th birthday. It was one hell of a present. People think, when they ask me about what I felt when I got diagnosed, I actually felt blessed. I felt revived because I was very ill when I got diagnosed. My blood sugar was 47. So yeah, I had all the symptoms that each and every person with type 1 diabetes gets pre-diagnosed. Extreme thirst, extreme loss of weight, lack of concentration, lethargic, short-tempered. I was like very, very ill. When I got diagnosed, when they put me on insulin in the hospital, I just felt great. And I didn't care about how life was gonna be afterwards, because at least I knew what was the reason for my illness, and there's a treatment for it. Not a cure, but a treatment. So I was happy. I used to play football back then, so I used to play for 2 professional clubs. I played for Swindon Town, and I played for a club in Egypt called the Mukawloon. I played with Mo Salah, under 16s back then, yeah. But I got diagnosed in October 2018, 2011. Why I keep on saying 2018? That's the second time I say that. 2011, and then January 2012, I broke my knee. So my football career was over. I had 2 failed operations, I ruptured the ligaments, that was done. But I always wanted to stay active. So I started going to the gym, and I realized that the myth of if you're diabetic, you can't put on weight easily, you can't do high intensity exercises, you can't perform well, you can't get stronger is all wrong. You don't have to be obese, you don't have to be old, you don't have to have a bad diet to get diabetes, or to even just have diabetes. So I started my social media platforms trying to break that myth, break the stigma that not all people, the majority of the population think. And then I decided that I want to even take it further. I started educating people, mentoring, not even mentoring, just basically raising awareness by posting my own progress and showing people what I've achieved. And I decided that I want to get into bodybuilding to even, because it's more challenging. And when I decided to do so, I went to my GP back then. I used to live in a place called Reading, and the nurse told me 2 things: you can't and you won't. And I said, why? She said, you can't because with your condition, with the insulin that you're taking, you can't put on all that muscles and lose all this fat and get stronger and so on. So that's one thing. The other thing was that they won't let me because it's very high risk and most likely it's not gonna work. So obviously, I took this as an extra challenge. I was stubborn about it. I was like, really? Okay, we'll see about that. Prepped for my first competition, did it, I won it. And yeah, moving forward, I had that exposure of showing people that if I'm able to do this in one of the hardest sports in the world, if not the hardest, taking into consideration the diet, then anyone can achieve what they want having diabetes. That was the message that I wanted to send to parents, athletes, kids, anyone that has diabetes or care of someone that has diabetes, that diabetes will give us challenges, no doubt about that, but it's not an obstacle. It doesn't stop us from reaching what we want, regardless of what it is. So I took that route, became a bodybuilder, got the exposure, and then I decided, so I graduated from a civil engineering degree from university, and I did it for 4 years. And I decided that I want to take it even an extra step further. Took qualifications to become a coach, a diabetes specialist in the exercise field, and a nutritionist. Left my job, and that's what I do now. What I do now is I coach people to manage their diabetes better, and especially parents, because it's easier to speak to parents than speaking to kids, and athletes, and pretty much everyone that wants to get a better diabetes management. So that is what I do now. I have my own platform, and I do it through social media. I don't have my slides, otherwise I would have showed you pictures. Every time I do enter a competition, I always leave my gadgets on, and whenever I win a competition, I actually put my insulin pen in the trophy, because I am the exact opposite of someone who is embarrassed from their diabetes. I take pride in it, and that's exactly what I want others to do as well. It's entirely up to the person whether they want to show it or not. That's personal preference, but no one should ever be embarrassed of their own diabetes. if anything, we should be proud of it. There is no one to blame for type 1 diabetes. So what I keep on asking people is, show it off when you can. And since we're blessed that we have this technology right now, it's making our life a lot easier, but also it's making diabetes very visible. How many times have you went out and you saw someone with a Freestyle Libre or a Dexcom or an Omnipod or a pump or whatever, and then you start a conversation with them. Like what Elise said, community is very important. And what we're doing right now, like this event, for example, is great to get people to understand that they are not alone. Yes, there is some mental health aspect comes with diabetes. We're more prone to fluctuation on our mental health, but once you know that others are sharing what you're going through, especially kids, that makes a huge difference. So yeah, that's part of the stuff that me and others are trying to do, especially online on social media, especially when COVID hit, everything was virtual anyway. But yeah, so that's what I do now for a living, and that's it. That's my story.
Does anyone have any questions for any or all three of?
Shall we get up there? Just doesn't been out of the way from the car.
Question for Khalid, my son's only 17. He joined a gym in January to start bulking up. We didn't realise he was type 1, it was a bit pointless. Now he's healthier with insulin and things. And he goes to the gym, and he's quite active in class and everything, but how can he, what would be your words to him for how to start building muscle effectively and looking after his diet?
It's basically learn your condition. So diabetes is very subjective. Everyone is different. There is a big aspect of trial and error. So for example, if he goes and works out and he lifts weights, he needs to ask himself, okay, what effect does that type of exercise has on his blood sugar? Does it elevate it? Does it drop it? It could elevate his blood sugar, but it could drop mine. So he needs to know this, okay, now that's out of the way, how to tackle it. He needs to understand, okay, if he does cardio, then maybe blood sugar is gonna drop, but if he does lifting weights, maybe it's gonna elevate. So if he's doing both of them at the same time, you gotta start understanding the importance of insulin dosage, but also insulin timing. When should you take the insulin? How long before the exercise or how long before the food? Same with consuming carbs. Okay, what type of carbs? Because I'm a believer in like my motto basically is prevent, not treat. We don't wait for a hypoglycemia or a hyperglycemia to happen to treat it. If you know that it's gonna happen, if you can foresee it, you prevent it. So that's what I would say, because that is when complications might arise. If you wait for your blood sugar to go to like 20 or something and then you start taking insulin. So he needs to learn his condition, knows the factors that affects it, and understand why as well. So if there's anything that is causing extreme fluctuation, he needs to understand that it's not just about insulin. It could be about long-acting insulin, for example. I'm not giving medical advice, but it could be changing a lot of factors around your life, your sleep, routine. Understand that temperature matters as well if he's abroad and so on. So it's basically just education, and trial and error. Yeah, you're welcome. Any more questions?
A question for Ben.
Yeah.
My son Sam is 7, and he was diagnosed at 2, and we're not sure as of yet whether he's actually got like hypo-awareness. But I'm starting to notice with him where he's not quite able to articulate.
Yeah.
But there's times where he'll tell me, "Daddy, I think I need a jelly baby, or I think I need an apple juice," and I go like, well, you look at his blood, so you go, "You don't, mate, you're fine." And then half an hour later, sure enough, he's right.
Mm.
And so I don't know whether or not, do you have any memory from when you were about a certain time in your life where you started feeling like, oh, I think I know this is...
It took me actually quite a while to actually develop a sort of hypo-awareness, because I was still, there was an example, I was playing in an ice hockey match, and my blood sugar was falling, and I didn't realise, so I carried on, and then all of a sudden the body just gave up and just effectively hit the deck. It took me until I was about 15 to get a proper, like a real awareness, not like, oh, I think I'm going low, but no, where I actually wake up and go, right, I'm going low, I need to go down, I need to check my blood sugar, and etc. It depends though as well, it depends on how much experience you have with your blood sugar. Obviously, in my case, that I grew up with it, obviously I grew up with with my diabetes, so grew the experience through that. In his case, to say when he'll get it just depends. Depends on how involved he is with it, how much he's actually checking. A good indicator would be if you'd be doing sports, so football or anything type of sports, then you can get an indicator, and then it will show you as well, because you need a certain level of performance, football, whatever it may be. So you know when you're at your peak and then you start dropping off, and that's then when you start to realise, hang on, there's something up here that we go and check quickly. So it's difficult to say when.
Yeah.
Can I ask the three of you about the difference between training days or regular days and competition or race days? So, and both in terms of your own kind of mental preparation, but also how it affects the blood sugar and type 1, that adrenaline thing that goes on in competition.
So in my case for race days, I would tend to, before the weekend, load up with a slow carb release, be it porridge, pasta, and I prepare myself pasta, salad boxes for the weekend, and all that's what I would then eat. And then before then the race, I'd have something a bit sweeter, or something like Luke say, just to pump my blood sugar up that bit more. So around about 12 before I get into the car, because my stints could vary from an hour to 2 hours. And then if we're doing something bigger like a 24-hour race or a 12-hour race, it goes, we'll have then multiple 2-hour sessions. So I have then a 4-litre bag full of Lucozade, which I then drink throughout the course, and by the time I'm done with my session, I'm at probably about 4, touching 3.9.
You must hate Lucozade, don't you?
Yeah, it does get that, especially in the car, because it's hot in the car, it's about 78 degrees. So the Lucozade is not cool, it doesn't taste nice, it's horrible. So you're effectively just drinking it and saying, oh, it doesn't taste nice at all. So, yeah, that's my experience.
I think it shows how like personal each diet is though, because for mine, I would want to start a race at least 15, and I know that sounds really high, but I will come down. And my races are probably similar length, like 2 hours, but I would be down. If I then didn't eat throughout it, I guess then
I think with mine though, it's more heat related. It's not, because car racing isn't as physical as what it used to be or what it was. So it's more heat exhaustion, which causes my blood sugar to drop. Where in your case, it's a lot more physical. You running, you're cycling, so it's a different, obviously different thing.
Mine is very severe. It's bodybuilding competitions itself is not the healthiest, I would say. So what we do is we do some water manipulation and carb loading. So I try to get rid of every single bit of water in my body just before I step on stage. And I carb load because I've been dieting for a very long time, so I have no glycogen in the muscles. So then I eat tons of carbs. It could reach like 800 grams of carbs. And then that would get into my muscles, and then it puffs the muscles out. So then there is no water between the skin, and the glycogen is pushing the muscles out. So then all the veins appear. It's not right. Do not do that. Do not advise your kids to do that. Yeah. Problem is with diabetes, so it makes it. That's why I said earlier the hardest sports with diabetes, because with diabetes it makes it 100 times harder, because I shouldn't be dehydrated when I'm. One thing I learned, just mentioned in the other session, is my very first competition, I was very strict about it. I went there to win, so I decided I'll do whatever it takes. So I dehydrated myself for a day, and then the conclusion was I realized my health is way more important, so I would never completely dehydrate myself again, because diabetes and dehydration, they don't mix together. That's not really good. So I give away a bit of my shape just for my health. So yeah, mine is completely different. And also sometimes I get severe insulin resistance from the insane amount of carbs that I consume. And forget even pre-competition, post-competition, when I'm done and now I'm free to eat what I want. I once, and I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating, in 2 days I consumed 40,000 calories. Yeah, so again, that's not advice, don't ever say this to your kids, but that is the truth. So yeah, my competition is different completely.
So hang on, what was that? 40,000 calories, we can eat that, yeah.
Calories.
Oh, calories, so
Yeah.
I'll eat 40,000 calories
And
now, and then I'll just say it was
Oh,
told me
here we
to.
go. Yeah, exactly, go on then. Yeah, go on.
I'd love to know what you ate.
Oh my god, it started by a box of 12 Krispy Kremes. I consumed them. So my partner got them for me and my friends who came to support me, and I'm like, and I just consumed the whole thing. That's the start. And then everyone that came to watch me from my friends, everyone baked something because they know how depleted I am. And that was the biggest mistake, because if it wasn't at home, I wouldn't have consumed that. But every time I opened the fridge, there's a brownies tray. I'm like, okay, why not? I didn't eat this for months. And yeah, and I remember that competition, my blood sugar was over 20 for a whole week. There is no way it didn't go down for a whole week. And that's when I realized I gotta, I'm still gonna compete, but health comes first. And then I did the minor changes, and this never happens again. So I'm never completely depleted. I'm never fully hungry, even if I don't look as good, but it doesn't matter because my health is more important. But yeah, bodybuilding is a dangerous sport, so yeah. But building muscles isn't. So I'm not discouraging. I can't speak anymore. Too many sessions. That one. Anyone from actually building muscle mass. Actually, this is very important. It's actually very important for diabetes as well, because the more muscle mass you have, the higher your insulin sensitivity becomes, the higher your metabolism becomes. So competition is unhealthy, but the actual sport, training and putting on decent weight, that is good. Yeah. Any more questions?
I've got a 12-year-old daughter who at the moment is very resistant to doing sport. But to get her interested, first of all, what would you suggest to get her interested in sport? And secondly, to build a little bit of muscle mass, or to do things that would really benefit her in the future, what would you recommend as a simple routine or sport that she could try?
I mean, as she's 12, I wouldn't advise her to lift weights now at all at this stage, but she needs to find something fun at this stage. You can't force her to do a specific sport just because of her diabetes, because I am a strong believer that for diabetes, I don't call diabetes an illness or a disease, I just call it a condition, but for it not to be a disease or an illness, you shouldn't be forcing them to do something for it. So I'd say you tell her to get into sports just to maybe look better or to be healthier, but not from the diabetes aspects of things. But I would definitely go for the likes of jogging, the likes of team sports, something that is fun. I'm not sure, maybe try to get her into rugby, football, I don't know, depends on what she prefers. Don't push her to go to a gym at all, because that's where the boredom is pretty much. If you're not willing to do it for a reason, you just go there and not like it. So maybe a team sport at school or so, that's a very, very good start. And then once she's 14 or something, she can then start hitting the gym, and then you can understand what she likes or what she wants. Yeah.
I think trying not to make it all about the diabetes, isn't it?
Exactly that.
Not saying anything like it'll be good for your blood sugars, or just go and have fun. That's where you've got to start with sport.
Because it leaves that little flavour with it. It's like, oh, I need to do this because I might end up, I don't know, obese or anywhere, or any of the health conditions with diabetes. So I think to let her and just guide her in that sense, just go, look, we can try this, and you can try this, and then you've got the options that you can pick from. Because there's nothing worse, you go, look, we've signed you up for football now, you need to do it now, and that's it. So it just becomes a bit, then creates that bit of resentment then. And then especially then going, but it's good for your diabetes, so then it adds then another thing on where you go like, why am I doing this for? So I think just guiding her and just letting her go her own little route is probably better than just forcing the issue with it.
Because the mental and the psychological aspect of diabetes is very strong in stubborn kids. So I've dealt with lots of teens, and I understand some of them, they just decide one day, hey, I'm not gonna take insulin today. I'm not gonna check my blood sugar today. That's it. I'm done with it. But you can call it a burnout, but it's just stubbornness coming from hormones in the system, maybe coming from bullying at school. There's so much into it. So the best that we can do is not add to it at all. Telling them that you have to care more in a specific way that would annoy you about your diabetes. Yeah. So, yeah.
My daughter's 8 years old, so she enjoys ice skating and gymnastics, and kind of like you were saying, you know, those two sports affect her differently, and how we have to kind of deal with them. But what we find more so probably with the kind of gymnastics type sport is that like maybe 2 and 3 in the morning we get that kind of drop of the lows kind of later on. Have you got any ideas as to how to kind of deal with that? I mean, we're quite new to a pump, so we're still to work out if there's a way perhaps through the pump to deal with that. But just in terms of what she maybe has like to eat at the time of the activity or later in the evening,
So-
any suggestions?
Is her low just that? So, just so I understand that, so her low was before the training or before anything?
It was really after, so like, so say she's at an activity like at 6 o'clock in the evening,
Yeah.
and she's kind of stable in the evening, you know, after that, so maybe gave her something before it, but maybe about 3 in the morning or so, it'll kind of dip down, and it does seem to be on after a night of when she's been more active, or if she's been out doing things during that day.
What I'd say, are you on a pump or is she using a
She
pump?
just started the
Yeah.
pod.
I'd have 2 different settings, 2 basal settings. I even have sometimes 3 or 4, depending on obviously if it's hot, or for race days if it's hot, and I know I'll be consumed or sweating a lot and be active. I then have a lower setting, or sometimes I've had even race days back in karting before I was even on a pump. I wouldn't consume any insulin at all. So if you just can effectively you could just do another setting which lowers everything, and then till it stables itself again. If you know you're being active 2 days or 3 days, and then the day after or the few days after, just have that setting on, it should just help stable it out. Or that's what my experience with it.
Yeah. And is that lowering it at the kind of point like during the night when she's likely to drop, or would you be lowering it before then? Kind of stop
I just lower it overall,
overall night?
so it's just a bit lower, even if it might be that it's a tad higher, but it's better than having the major drops during the night and her waking up and affecting her sleep now.
So I'll just assume that she doesn't have a pump. If it's something frequent, then you need to change whether either your background insulin or your short-acting insulin. Obviously, because she has a pump, that is great, because as Ben said, there is that temporary basal that makes a huge difference. But if after every single session, every day, she goes hypo, then you should know that, okay, just before this incident, she needs X amount of sugar, let's say 30 grams of glucosate or something. That will prevent it. Same if it's hyper. If she goes hyperglycemic in a specific duration, time frame of the day, then you know that, okay, she needs insulin at that time before it happens. Saving a hypo or a hyperglycemia before it happens is a lot easier than treating it, because if I am to talk about hyperglycemia, for example, the higher the blood sugar is, the more correction dose that she needs. So it's not like a linear kind of equation. So, but because she's on an Omnipod now, it's going to make it a lot easier. So find the time frame where she goes hypo, and you want to pick that maybe half an hour or an hour before or so, and drop your insulin. Maybe even start by disabling the insulin and then add to it slowly if in the next session you saw that she goes hypoglycemic. Insulin dosage and insulin timing are as important, so you should take time into consideration.
Yeah, it's a bit of trial and error as well. You need to find what works best, because every body is obviously different to the other. So she might be affected by the exercise in a different way to her peers or whoever else is doing the sport with her. So,
Because I find that for me, if it's not happening every night, then I wouldn't change my
It's like a
background on
one-off,
things.
yeah.
And because that happens to me, and I know if I go for a session and I didn't realise it was going to be quite as hard as it was, I know I'll go low in the night, so I'll eat something high carb before bed, rather than like not sweets or anything, just something that will keep me going, like a glass of milk or something through the night. Because if you change your long acting that night, it's not going to do anything quick enough. So it's kind of playing it by ear, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
Can I just ask about during sports? I think Ben, you mentioned about having Lucozade. I know it's all different for different sports, but do you have other things that you tend to use that don't just bring you up for a little while and then drop you again? Is there other things that you can recommend?
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be Lucozade. Lucozade, well, that's just personal preference. For me, is the fastest.
Yeah.
So once I have a sip of Lucozade, I straight away, like within 5-10 minutes, I feel that it's rebounding. But sometimes Lucozade is not accessible, so I use sweets. I use any kind of juice. If it depends, I know what you mean by the question, like how to keep it up instead of like going up and down. It depends what is the reason for it. So, for example, if you took an extra dose of insulin and you went hypo, it means you went hypoglycemic because of that extra dose of insulin. So all you need to do is to counteract it by having sugar, glucose. But if you went hypoglycemic because you exercised, it means that your metabolism is high. So you're burning sugar in the system, and even after you treat the hypoglycemia, your metabolism might still be high, and that's when it drops again. So how to sort this out is to have a food that is rich in fat or protein, because that slows down the drop of blood sugar. So for example, something like peanut butter, toast and eggs, for example. So basically, try to always, if it's exercise related, try to have a meal instead. So try to treat the hypo and also have a meal. That would make a huge difference.
But if it's obviously in a race, you're not going to be eating toast and eggs.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you can cook. You can cook them in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that while I pee in my suit or after?
Well, yeah.
By the way, it's not that I do that on purpose. We had a different question in one of the others. They asked how I go to the toilet in a race car, and the answer is I just pee my suit.
Yeah, with the tweens or something. Yeah. Yeah. These are the first real questions that we get, by the way, since the start of the day. So we're glad.
Each of you touched a bit on mental health issues, which I think are really important and are not talked about enough amongst people with type 1. I guess, and all three of you are doing things which are day after day after day of training or preparation, and there must be some not so good days amongst those, presumably because of not necessarily because of the sport, maybe because of the sport, maybe because of hypos, maybe because of life. How do you kind of keep going, training or preparing through
I think you just accept that you have bad days. Like everybody has bad days, and I had one recently because I had been injecting a lot in my stomach, and then my nurse said to move it, and she was like, "Oh, it doesn't hurt when you inject around the side," and she's not diabetic. And when someone tells you that, you know, that's. And I think my experience here was a bit higher, and it was all just kind of felt like a kick after a kick kind of thing, and I just had a bad day, and then I got back to it the next day. You know, you just accept it's not all going to be.
Yeah, we have that acceptance, and then it's fine to take a step back. So I for example, I had the worst start of the year I could have, really. I got all my work stolen from my car. I got the whole car stolen in London, and I ruptured. That's the injury that I had. That I couldn't train anymore. I ruptured this ligament right here, TFCC, and I lost tons of money in investment. Everything happened within a week, so I felt very down, and definitely my training wasn't the same. My blood sugar control wasn't the same. Nothing was the same. But the best way that I tackled this is I actually took a step back. So I cancelled my work, traveled, went back home. So my parents, they live in Egypt, stayed there for a few weeks. And readjusted my brain, readjusted my mind, and started again stronger than before. So
it's just not possible to keep it.
No.
Constant,
No. Because diabetes. So people with diabetes, that's a fact. That's a sad fact. Are more prone to mental health conditions. So that is true. Like we're more prone for it to happen to us. So the fact that you have an acceptance to it, it's completely fine as long as you don't give up.
I think it's made me a lot mentally stronger though at the same time.
Yeah,
I don't know,
exactly. Yeah.
So
what you
much
went
more
through
resilient.
makes you.
Yeah.
Doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. Yeah. Yeah. More questions.
You got any suggestion how to approach the subject? Not that we don't talk about the subject, but it's 7 at type 1 diabetes, and you can often you'll have a hypo, or we'll talk about it, and it's often listening, but he doesn't ever say to us that it's playing on his mind or thinking about it. And we do talk to him about it, but you can see it on his mind, and he'll hear conversations or like this was yesterday, for example, he had a green band, and straight away he knew I'm the only one with the green band, and then we started to explain that there'll be lots of them here. But it's getting it out of him and getting the conversation out of him that
think because it's so, or in my case especially with being in the countries where I was literally the only one, I think even in Germany I was the only one in the village, which was even weirder, but it's difficult to say how it will affect now in case your kids, but for me it was like, it's me. I can't change anything about it. Obviously, yes, to say you don't have your bad days and don't have off days would be wrong, but you just need to, as in a way, as you said, get on with it. You need to just approach it. Yes, there'll be a lot of things playing on your mind, but in a way to speak about it, I'll just approach it delicately and just carefully and ask him a bit as well, or ask as well. Not in a way, oh yeah, how is it affecting you, but are you comfortable? What could we do to help and sort of, and just go from that approach to see if you can make it a bit helpful and be a bit more comfortable with the whole thing, rather than actually approach the issue, oh yeah, I've got diabetes, the world is ending and what so forth. So in my case, I just effectively just got, in a way, told that you need to get on with it, otherwise you're not gonna, or there's going to be serious health implications with it as well.
I spoke to one parent actually recently who had a roughly the same age child, and they said that they found it really helpful. They wrote notes to each other, so the child just found it easier to write stuff down and give it to their parent. So they wrote notes rather than like asking them outright and putting them on the spot. They could just write a note saying, "You can always talk to us if there's anything you want to talk about," just write back kind of thing. Even though you all live in the same house, but it's just a different way of communicating rather than face.
Because we know with us, like, he'll think things and you can see it, he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, it is
Even
hard.
things like just trying to get into, like when we're adding up the cards to design, we'll get him to do the maths for it. Just to get him involved without directly getting him involved. So we're like, well, it's 15 and 17 and
It's that right amount, isn't it?
And even just involving him like that, because we're very conscious that he hears us talking about it, but we're not talking to him.
Yeah.
And I think he's getting to an age where we expected him to ask more questions, because he was 2, it was just before his second birthday. So he doesn't know any different, but I expected him to ask more questions, and he does.
Has he got other friends who are diabetic or
There's
older
boys
people
in his
that?
class, luckily, in that sense, that they've got each other.
Yeah. What about someone that you'd look up to, like an older, like as in, would he?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Just
Like
someone
a type
that's outside of the
an
family.
idol, somebody
Yeah, like a
you
role model.
idolise, go, he's got diabetes as well, he's coping with this.
But
So,
when I said to him before, there's a relative later who's diabetic, and I said, oh, he's type 1 as well, but he instantly just cuts it off. Doesn't make any emotion to it, like bothered or not bothered. That's why he keeps going, but he doesn't want to
And maybe,
bring it up.
maybe that's good, maybe that's just fine, maybe he doesn't bother him at all, I don't know, because he doesn't know any different.
Thing is with kids, of course a lot of parents that had similar problem with kids, there are different factors that would affect them, such as they're just stubborn, they don't want to accept it, they're getting bullied for it in school, for example, so they don't want to open the topic at all. One thing that kids hate is basically education. Boring talks about diabetes and nutrition. I swear to God, the best way for them to understand or to get involved is through a community, seeing people like them, their age, playing, doing sports, just like them. They don't feel that they're alone, and seeing role models. So maybe his dream is to be an athlete in a specific sport, or to have a business or something, or to be successful in something. There is always someone that has type 1 diabetes who's very elite in that field, in every single sport, every single field. So yeah, open it up, talk to them about that person, show them what they've approached and what they've reached. But yeah, I think talking to them in the way, hey, if you don't do this, that complication might happen, or you have to count carbs, otherwise your blood sugar is gonna go high. They hate it. I've spoke to a few and I gave up. I'm like, nah, man, we're gonna change the whole way of speaking right now. And what works is what I said, most likely. Hopefully it works. Oh, yeah, well.
I hope I can articulate this properly. Our son is just turned 8, diagnosed when he was 3, and he's just sort of past 18 months became hyper aware. So when he was a bit younger, he just used to say, I'm hungry, but now he's sort of starting to come and say, I feel like my bloods are low. And as a parent, it's like really horrible because I can see it you take, talking before about taking risks, it's really hard, I think, when it's not you, you know the potential and it can never be over. So all three of you are obviously really like dedicated and kind of really like stringent in the training programs and things you do. So I just wonder, with things like trying to avoid hypos, is there a number for you or a percentage or something where you kind of accept that actually that point is an acceptable point of being diabetic and you can't be a total perfectionist, or do you always try and get it like down to zero? I'm just wondering, as a parent, are you sort of at what point you just kind of accept that there will always be hypos and you try and prevent them, and at what point you kind of go, actually no, we need to strive to get that sort of a bit
So there isn't a single type 1 or diabetic out there that has like a straight line of blood sugars. It doesn't happen. Even people without diabetes, if you are a Libra and you look at your chart throughout the day, you will find like a peak and a trough, and but within range. So no, you cannot perfect diabetes. I'm speaking to you right now, I think my blood sugar, I might be hyper, I was hyper before, completely fine, as long as you don't give up to it. So slowly, so I think with kids it only gets better. I was diagnosed when I was 18. I wasn't young, and my mother had the exact same feeling as you. When I'm hypo, she panics and she runs to the kitchen, gets me something. I'm like, Mom, I can manage, that's fine. So I fully understand where you're coming from, but I think it only gets better. So if you're worried now, it's completely you're right, but it's not going to be this bad, and hopefully you will get to that acceptance level of becoming hypo is a part of our life. But the best way is to try to prevent it anyway. Just try, not completely prevent it, because you won't be able to. Just try.
And not making like the highs and the lows kind of dramatic events, being like, like you said, and like, oh my goodness, we need to do this, or that's really bad, that high, just like it's normal, like we do go high and low, and it's just, obviously we all want to keep it in a tighter range, but it's just not possible. And being like, oh, okay, you're a bit high, but that's okay, we can do this,
And obviously behind the scenes, you're trying to understand why you went hypo or hyper, and then you take the steps. Okay, maybe we need to reduce this, maybe we need to add that, then that should work out.
That just comes with experience though. The more experience you've got with it, and the more time you actually spend and actually learn about your condition, the more you're obviously going to know, the more you're going to have like little tips and tricks of what you can do and what helps you throughout the day or throughout whatever you want to be doing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So, well, I have read quite a bit about the diet that's been followed mainly in the US, about Dr. Bernstein, and there are quite a few. I think I joined the group. It was about type 1 diabetes, and I really didn't know whether it was US or UK. I just joined a few of them, and this was one of the groups. And I see a lot of parents in US. They are very passionate about this keto diet, which is recommended by Dr. Bernstein, and reading that itself is just like very stressful for me. Like, in the sense, I don't know how good it is because it's very restrictive, and all these children are on, they don't need carbs, so they just go on a low carb meal, and then they have like really flat lines all the time, and they talk about it, and they're like really proud about it, and they kind of they eat everything, but then they're all dosed with heavy amount of sweeteners like cakes, and then they have and I think also there are lots of products in US which supports this, like the keto products like zero carbs, which I find it a bit definitely not good that we would want to take. But I just wanted to know what your opinion about it. Have you tried any restrictive diet?
So I tried a keto diet, and I'd done that for about a year. So I was consuming a day probably about 30 grams of carbs. It landed me in hospital. The way it happened was quite odd actually. So I woke up and again prepping my meals and felt really ill, so started throwing up, and then it landed me effectively. I think they said it landed me in a DKA, where my whole body was then poisoning itself. It wasn't that I wasn't or mismanaging my blood sugar, but it was just I was depriving myself, I think, of that much carbs or anything that it just affected me. levelled me out then effectively, and I ended up in hospital through it. So I wouldn't necessarily, especially at a young age, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because it can, especially if you push it to the extreme, it can have a bit of a worse impact on it, or potentially a very big impact.
So I'm the biggest enemy of a keto diet, just to let you know, right? Even if you don't have diabetes. So carbs, glucose is the primary source of energy for the brain. Do you really want your kid to grow up without having the right energy, getting into his brain? And also, kids, they need nutrients to grow up. They need muscle glycogen. Muscle glycogen is the carbohydrates in your muscles to be able to perform activities like other kids. That's one thing. Another thing is, they're kids. They will crave candy and chocolates and cakes. And why would you not let them have it? Just for the sake of having a better diabetes management. That's the thing. A keto diet is an easier way of having maybe a more stable blood sugar levels, but you're compromising on lots of other stuff.
You're compromising on your health then more of anything.
And because it's not that there is no way of consuming carbs and having stable blood sugar levels. No, there is. So I'm completely against that. I know tons of people that went on a keto diet. So we call it, so in nutrition, we call a keto diet and other similar diets crash diets, where people use it for a specific event, for example, but it cannot be long term, because you're gonna end up when you're on a keto diet, you're actually gonna be most likely losing weight and losing muscle mass. You're gonna end up rebounding once you start eating again. Happened to every single client that I have that followed the keto diet before. They lose a lot of weight very quickly, and then boom, they explode back. Same is gonna happen with the blood sugar. If your body is not sensitive to carbohydrates, doesn't know what carbohydrates is, and then your kid wants to eat a cake on his birthday, for example, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So no,
He'll then just end up eating the whole cake because his whole body's been deprived of
and you won't be able to put your insulin down as well. Yeah, that's me on competition days, by the way. So that's exactly what I do. I do the keto. So I actually do the keto, but only for 2 weeks before the competition,
so not a year.
for a specific event. Yeah, not a year.
No, usually
So can I put a plug in for the session first thing tomorrow morning in this room? So, which is all about, so every year we find that there are lots of questions, just like really good questions, or things that we've heard, which you wouldn't necessarily want to bring up in your quarterly hospital appointment, either because you don't want to admit that you've read this stuff, or because you don't trust the person that's giving the answer or whatever. So we've got a session here at 9:15 tomorrow morning, which is, not necessarily for diets, but for any of those kind of questions which you've not had a chance to ask, and you kind of wish that you had. We've got someone who promises they will answer anything, right, related to type 1. So please do that. In the meantime, it's time for us to go and collect our children, but thank you, Ben and Khalid.